Wow. Morrow says, time to consolidate UTXOs, cheap block space. Yep. So I was going to say, actually, you know what? Let's take this a little bit further here, because I like this stuff, and I think it's very important to help people kind of understand this. So I've been talking about on this show, I don't know if I've talked about it too much on the show, but in our 365 days of Bitcoin course that we're doing, we're on day 42 today. But one of the shows I did was like a template for UTXOs, something that people can follow. And it doesn't have to be like exactly to the percentage, to the amount, but it's just something where people can start, I think. And as I think back here about what I suggested versus what this wallet is doing here. So where is this wallet? Let me go to Kung Fu Fu, BitFuFu. So their address here, we're going to find their main address. Where was that? Right here? Yes. So if we look at their UTXOs that they're keeping, and this is a little bit different because I mean, it's a pool, public. I don't know if they're a public pool or not, but this is kind of what I suggested exactly when I think about it, because I said, take your Bitcoin stack, whatever you have for Bitcoin, and create one UTXO with about half the amount. This is just kind of like a place for people to start. You take half of the amount of Bitcoin that you have, you put that in one UTXO. And this is what I've done myself. So this isn't like advice. This is what I do. But you take half of your Bitcoin, put it in one UTXO, and then that's kind of like your generational UTXO. That one's never going to move. And again, this, depending on what you're holding Bitcoin for, depending on what your future plans are, that's what mine is. So I'm going to keep that 50% UTXO. That's my generational UTXO. And then I'm going to have a couple of smaller ones, like let's say 20% of my stack, and then 10% of my stack, and then 5, 2, 2, 1, 1, stuff like that. So that's kind of my template that I used. And it looks like these guys are doing something very similar to that. Not exactly, but if we look at the total wallet balance here, it's 2,600 Bitcoin. And they got about, just under half of it in one UTXO. So this is very similar to the UTXO template that I suggested. And when you're talking about UTXOs, you have to be concerned with two different things here on each end of the scale. And this is important to understand. So on one side of the scale, you have to worry about your privacy. So if you had a big UTXO, let's say that you had all of your Bitcoin in one UTXO, and you wanted to spend some of that Bitcoin at some point in the future. You make a transaction, whoever you sent it to, they can follow that back and see your full stack of Bitcoin there. So for privacy reasons, you want to keep your UTXOs somewhat smaller. On the flip side of things, though, you want to make sure that your UTXO size are large enough where you don't have to worry too much about transaction fees. Because if you had to, let's say you had 1,000 small UTXOs and you wanted to spend some Bitcoin. And in order to pay for whatever you're paying for, you need to combine like, let's say 50 UTXOs just to make that payment. They had to combine 50 UTXOs to pay somebody. That's going to cost you a lot of transaction fees. So you really have to find a nice balance between privacy and transaction fees, somewhere in there. And that's kind of how you have to structure your UTXOs. Again, this is very, very, I would say valuable information. Like there's probably people in the future here that are going to be charging large amounts to manage people's UTXOs and to educate people on their UTXOs. So good to understand. Good to understand here. Daniel says, late to the game, morning savages. Good morning, Daniel.